Hey, how's it going? Bill Leatherman here for Money Evolution. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 expenses that you can ditch as you go into retirement. So if you're like many of our clients and maybe you're still working and maybe you're making pretty good money, like the example that we're going to go through here in just a few minutes, let's say you're making $400,000 a year and you want to retire in a few years and you're really just trying to figure out how in the heck am I going to bridge that gap between making $400,000 a year and then relying entirely off of my retirement portfolio and maybe some Social Security and a pension if you're lucky enough to have one. Well, basically for many of our clients and maybe for you too, as you go into retirement, there's going to be some expenses that are likely going to drop off for you. You're not going to have some of those same expenses as you go into retirement. I almost guarantee there's going to be some of these expenses that you're going to be able to ditch and get rid of. But real quick, before I get into the content of today's video, if you're watching this and you want to learn more about what we do at Money Evolution, you can head over to our website, moneyevolution.com. There you can learn about some of the financial planning programs that we have, including our Retirement Time Machine program, which is excellent to really get a jump start on wherever you're at with your retirement planning. And we also have some great free resources and our Money Evolution blog that you can check out over there as well. And we'll put links to all of that stuff down in the description below. All right, so let's jump in. We're going to be looking at a hypothetical situation here, and we're going to assume that this individual is making $400,000 a year. So very good income. We're also going to assume that this is a married couple filing a joint tax return. We might get a little bit into some taxes here, but we're going to assume, just to make things simple, that both spouses are making about the same amount of money. So they're both each making $200,000 per year. And again, if this isn't your example, if this isn't where you're at, 400,000, maybe you're higher than that, maybe you're a little bit lower than that, really doesn't make any difference because a lot of these expenses are going to apply regardless of what level of income that you're at. So the first expense that is going to probably drop off for you is going to be FICA taxes. And that's something that a lot of people really don't think about, but regardless of whether you're putting money into a 401k or not, all of your income that you earn from your employer is going to be subject to those FICA taxes. And FICA taxes, as we've talked about before on other videos on the channel, you may already know, is really broken up into 2 components. There's the Social Security component, which is 6.2%, but that only goes up, I say only, but it goes up to $176,100 is the limit there for 2025. And so you only pay that 6.2% on the first $176,100. So again, we have a married couple, both spouses are making $200,000. So they're going to hit that $176,100, but they're going to get maybe a little bit less than $24,000 that is going to be without that 6.2% Social Security component to that. And then the other component of FICA is going to be the 1.45% Medicare tax, and that is uncapped. So they're going to pay the 1.45% on all of their income. In this case, all 400,000 or 200,000 for each of the spouses there. And that would be the same thing if you're making $1 million or $2 million a year. You're going to unfortunately pay that 1.45% on all of your earned income. So doing a quick calculation on that, based on this hypothetical client making 400,000, they're going to have $27,636 that they're going to pay in FICA taxes for the income that they're earning from their employment. And this is on earned income. So once you start taking money out of your 401k or your IRA account, even though it's going to be taxable probably at a federal level, you are not going to have to pay that FICA taxes. You don't have to pay FICA taxes on interest income. You don't have to pay FICA taxes on your Social Security income or pension income. It's only on earned income, which is going to come from W-2 employment income if you're working for somebody else, or your business income. And if you're self-employed, you have to pay the self-employment tax, and that's going to be basically double that because you're going to be paying both sides of that number. So that's something very important to remember and keep in mind with this. The second expense that you can ditch that is going to be your savings. So if you're putting money into a 401k plan and it's going into that every month. Hopefully you're doing pretty well putting that money away. Maybe you're putting money into an IRA account. Maybe you're just saving money in a regular savings account or doing something else. Well, as you go into retirement, you don't need to save money anymore. You're not likely to want to save money anymore because now you're going to kind of flip the script and you're going to be withdrawing money more than likely from your portfolio. So you no longer have to worry about that saving. So we're going to assume here, again, we're running through this hypothetical example, we're going to assume that both spouses are maybe just a little bit under maxing out their 401k plan, just to make my numbers nice and easy and round. We're going to assume they're each putting $30,000 a year into their 401k plan for a total of $60,000. So that's $60,000 that they're not going to need as part of their retirement budget, because they're not spending that now, they're saving that money. So very important on that. The third one that I want to talk about is going to be a mortgage. And everyone's going to be different here. We do see a decent percentage of clients that still have a mortgage as they go into retirement. We strongly advocate as much as possible to have people pay their mortgage off before they get into retirement, but sometimes maybe that's not always possible, or maybe they have a mortgage that's going to be paid off, let's say in the first 5 years of retirement or at some point in their retirement. But assuming that you could pay off your mortgage before you go into retirement, and you've been used to paying that, that's part of what that $400,000 of income that you're earning is going towards. Let's say you're doing, what are my notes here saying? Let's say you're paying $3,500 a month on a mortgage payment, and that's $42,000 a year that once that mortgage is paid off, you no longer have to worry about that. And so that's going to reduce that $400,000 again by a little bit. Now, one very important thing as we're talking about mortgages, if you're making a payment and that payment includes escrow for taxes and insurance, that doesn't go away, unfortunately. You always have to pay the taxes and insurance. So once the mortgage is paid off, you're going to have to make that payment to your insurance company and to your property tax assessor, however you normally would do that. So if the payment here is, let's say, $4,000 a month, but that includes an extra $500 a month for your taxes and insurance, you're not going to save the full $4,000 a month or $48,000. You're only going to save the $3,500 like we're using in this example, which is the principal and interest portion of that. Number 4 is a big one, and everyone's going to be a little bit different on this too, depending on how old your kids are, how young you started raising a family. But the kids' expenses hopefully are going to go away at some point. So if you're still working and maybe you're still getting kids through high school or college, and there's a lot of those expenses, I know we've talked a lot about this in other videos, but those expenses can't be ignored, and those expenses hopefully at some point are going to go away. You're not going to have to pay for soccer, hockey, or piano lessons, or school functions, college expenses, whatever that is. So those kids' expenses are going to go away at some point, and maybe it's before you retire, or maybe it's in the first few years of retirement. We're going to just write down a number here just so we can get some context, and let's say that those kids' expenses are costing $15,000 a year for whatever it may be. Food is another big one. We have kids that are getting to be young adults and everything, and kind of slowly transitioning out of the house, but when they're home, we go through a lot more food than when they're not at home. So that's a big deal. Don't forget about the food expenses there. Number 5 is going to be those work-related expenses. And these are things that if I could spell here, these are things that maybe you don't always think about there, but you've got travel back and forth to work. So you've got maybe more gas, fuel consumption that you normally would have if you didn't have to go to work, or maybe you have to travel a little bit for your job and things like that, and maybe some of those expenses are not being reimbursed. You go out to lunch with friends or coworkers on a daily basis. All that stuff can really add up. Maybe you have to have a certain amount of, you have to have certain clothes and dry cleaning and things like that that you wouldn't normally have, or at least you wouldn't have quite as much if you weren't having to go to work every day. Kind of a funny story here. So our adult daughter, she just entered into the professional workforce, and she has a job where she has dry cleaning and things, and she recently moved out of the house, but she came back and she dropped off some of her dry cleaning to our house, and my wife said to her, she said, you should really get your own dry cleaning account so they can pick it up from your place, and you don't have to come back here all the time. And she said, oh no, that's okay. I don't really mind coming back here to drop off the laundry and pick it up. Well, because it's expensive, and so we'll see how long that lasts. And so that's one of those kids' expenses that we're sort of covering here as our young adults are kind of transitioning off onto their own. So those dry cleaning bills and lunches and things like that can really add up. So let's say that we're going to have $6,000 a year, maybe that's $500 a month, I guess is the way that works out, of those work-related expenses that you're not going to have as you go into retirement. So all of those things, as we add up the $60,000 for the savings, the $27,000 for the FICA taxes, the $42,000 for the mortgage, kids expenses $15,000 and work expenses of $6,000, all that adds up to $150,000 of savings. So instead of needing that $400,000, you're really maybe at $250,000. Maybe there's some other things that we can cut, but basically it's a lot less maybe than you thought, and that bridge between where you're at right now and retirement might be a little bit closer than you think. One more thing I'm going to put on here, and this is sort of a bonus one here, but life insurance. And I'm making some other videos where we're going to get into the details of this. But essentially, life insurance is one of those things that you buy when you're young, when you have a bigger mortgage, you've got young kids or a family that's very dependent on you for income. And having that life insurance is very important. But as you get older and your assets grow and your kids move out of the house and you really become more self-sufficient, because as you go into retirement, essentially you're already financially independent. You're relying just on the portfolio assets and the other predictable income sources that you may have, like Social Security and a pension. So the need for insurance is really a lot less, or maybe zero life insurance is really the place that you should be for that. So whatever you may be paying for life insurance, and if you've been carrying some additional life insurance maybe through your 50s or even into your early 60s because you are still paying off a mortgage or getting the kids through college or whatever that may be, as those expenses go away and your assets grow a little bit, that expense can really go down a lot, and that life insurance gets more expensive dramatically as you get older. So whatever you were paying for life insurance premiums, that can essentially go away for most people as they go into retirement there. So there you go. So there's 5 expenses that you can ditch as you go into retirement, with the bonus one talking about life insurance. And again, hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you do, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Check out the moneyevolution.com webpage and some of the links we have down in the description below. And I will see you back in one of my next videos. Thanks.